Hello, welcome to this episode of Learning How to Code. So, for this episode, we're gonna go through for loops now instead of a while loop. And as you can already see, there's for loops already look quite interesting. We just so it doesn't look just this red thing, and you kind of see what the for loop looks like. We're doing some weird things. We're doing initialization, and we're doing declaration and initialization. We're doing you can see some Boolean happen here. K less than 100. What's happening here? And we got K plus plus. What the heck is all of this? But then we kind of look in here in our code block, because we're looping. So you can see we have our nice little block of code that we're going to be looping through. And we can see yeah, this is pretty much the same thing. But for some reason, we don't have any way to stop. It's just a continue. How are we supposed to stop? Well, we're going to figure that out very quickly. So let me just run this code real quick. And it stopped a little bit, and it stopped too late because I didn't put this there. Okay, so it stopped here, and we can see that integer k. So what's happened? So a for loop is very interesting in that it's a specialized version of a while loop. A while loop is built to basically be where if I reach a certain state or a certain condition, I will stop doing whatever I'm doing. A for loop is a specialized version of a while loop that is basically just letting the programmer know, hey, I'm doing this because I'm just counting down, or I'm counting up, or I'm counting towards some value, or towards some value, and that is what I'm trying to do. And the reason we have it is so it's more easy for you as a programmer to express to yourself, in a year or two from now, what you're doing in this code. You're counting down from something, or you're counting up from something, and it just kind of puts everything in a nice place, so you have less of a headache. Because obviously, as we see when I run this code, it's going to run exactly the same as the previous code, but it stopped, even though it has no reason to stop. And the reason for that is after we declare and initialize, we do this part right here, which is we perform a check, which is once again part of the for loop, where it says if k is less than 100, if k is less than 100 is true, the code is allowed to run. We don't need to actually do a check in here because we're always going to do the check. The check will always be made even if we use continue. So we don't have to account for that check. We can actually just stop right at 100 the way we want it. Then we go to k plus, and then now after we do this, the computer will then say, okay, now let me do all this code. And we can see we're not incrementing this code at all. So how is it updating? Because obviously we can see the code is updating. We can see that it updated. How is it doing that? Well, the reason that's happening is after it runs all this code, the computer then does one last thing. It goes to this spot right here, and this is a k plus plus. And I bet y'all wondering, what is k plus plus? Well, if you see my comment section right here, k plus plus is equivalent to k is equal to k plus 1. So basically, like I said before, if k is equal to 0 and then I say k plus plus, what I'm telling the computer in a shorthand way is basically just saying, hey, computer, increment this variable by 1. Just increment it, whatever, and this works for, any number that you're using, any number you're using in C#. So, so if I'm at -1, I do plus plus, it's going to turn it into 0. If -1 is in a variable, obviously, I can't just -1 plus plus, that doesn't work. But if -1 is in, say, a variable called d, and I plus plus d, it becomes 0. And that's all plus plus is. You can also see that there is a plus plus k. Do not worry too much about it. All this, for now, when it comes to a for loop, plus plus k or k plus plus are equivalent. They have no differences. There will be, nothing will change if you do it. I mean, I should just show it, just so you can see. In case there will be no differences when we run the code again. As you can see, the code ran exactly the same way, because when it comes, because like I said, but there is a difference between these two. But when it's using a for loop, there is no difference. Now we kind of gone through the traditional for loop. There's really nothing else to say besides for I, if the number is even, skip printing the after part. If the number is odd, print the after part. Very simple stuff. We've already done it. And now we can so I'm just kind of show you, kind of what the for loop, how far you can stretch it. Now, as you can see, this for loop has code that is very similar to the code in our while loop. Not even very similar. It's exactly the same. And the reason for that is a for loop doesn't need to have its initialization and declaration, its condition check, or its increment. It doesn't need to do any of that. You don't need to do any of it in here. And if you write your for loop like this, for all intents and purposes, you're basically saying while true. Now, and as you can see, this code, when I click it, will run the exact same way. And we see it go. Obviously, it stopped because we're stopping, but let's let it go. And we see it basically is the exact same answer we expected from the while loop, and that is because the simple fact is, as far as the computer is concerned, this, as I said before, this is just a while true. There is nothing special occurring. The code is just say, hey, loop until you stop. And so you can see we need to use break here to get out, because there is no condition to stop. So we need our if to come back, and we need our break to get us out of here. And so, this is basically all the for loop does. The for loop is just a while loop that doesn't need that. It's a specialized while loop that uses usually uses a counting variable to determine how it's gonna, when it's gonna continue. Not continue, but how many times it's gonna run the loop. While while loop can do the same thing, you can see we have to spread it out. We have to set up a variable above it, because we can't set the variable inside of it, because as we saw before, if we set it up inside of here, it will just keep getting resetted. The loop will never stop. And then we have to have a condition to break out of it, and we have to increment it ourselves in here. And we have to make sure we plan accordingly, because as we saw before, because I didn't plan properly, this code failed to run properly because it would skip over 100. But now it no longer skips over 100. Now, it does skip over 100, but it won't. But as soon as it hits 100, it basically like, okay, I'm done now. Instead of just continuing to do work over and over and over again, it's able to stop. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. I would like, if you could, to leave a comment. I won't ask for a subscription, because looking at the quality of these, I got a long way to go. For the next video, we will be going through we're going to go into a project, because we now have all the information we need to start a project. And I'm just going to and I kind of want you to spend a little time thinking about how you would do it using all the stuff we've learned up to this point. And what we're going to do is we're going to build a simple little calculator, where all it's going to do is it's going to ask us for two numbers, and then it's going to ask us for the operation plus, minus, subtraction, plus, minus, multiplication, and division. And then it's going to do the math on them, and then it's going to give it back to you. And it's only going to make the program stop if you enter, say, the letter Q, or enter whatever you want to put in. So that will be our next project, or not our next, but that will be our first project. And I want you to think about, kind of write down your idea. How would I do this using this code? And if you're crazy enough, try to do it now. Anyway, once again, I hope you enjoyed this. Can't wait for us to do the project, if any of you actually exist. I'm not just talking to myself. And have a great day.